Okay, so I'm now firmly in the taper. It's a Friday, 9 days out from the Melbourne Marathon. This is that really irritating period where training isn't particularly exciting. You're not really building fitness, you're just trying to maintain. And yeah, you're just keeping things ticking over until race day, but yeah, I don't like this period at all. I tend to like the feeling of doing a lot of training, going to bed tired, and sleeping well. And so yeah, it's a bit of a mental struggle for me, this period in the training block. It's the kind of midpoint and the taper. But I've switched back to Norwegian singles now. I guess it's given me an opportunity to refocus the training a little bit. It gives me something to aim at. Just trying to bump up that anaerobic threshold again. But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. I had a bit of an injury scare last week, just coming off the Ross Half Marathon. I felt really, really good after that, actually. I thought I'd pulled up quite well. Got to Wednesday, did a sub-threshold session 3 days after the Ross. And just after the first rep, my adductor was just a little bit tight, and I could feel just a little bit of groin irritation. But as usual, I just ploughed straight through it, finished off the session. It wasn't too bad. And then in the cool down, yeah, that irritation in the groin was a bit of pain. Well, it turned into a bit of pain. The following days, it was still there, still quite irritating. I did what I usually do in those kind of situations, which is a lot of Googling, what could it possibly be? And I thought maybe it's just weakness in my adductor. So I did some exercises that seemed to make it worse. I continued to train because that's just what I typically do. And then I kind of stumbled on the idea of maybe it's just the bursa in my hip. I think it's called the iliopsoas bursa. Maybe that's just become inflamed. And so I followed the prescription of what to do if that's the case. And that seemed to take care of it. I iced it, foam rolled it, tried to avoid doing too much internal rotation of my hip, which is what I was doing with the exercises. And yeah, it seemed to at least improve. Still not 100%, but I'm having no problems when I'm running. Not feeling at all. It's not bothering me. It's just when I'm laying down in bed, I can kind of feel there's just a little bit of stiffness and soreness there. I don't know if it's just me contracting my lower abdominals. It tends to set it off a little bit, but no, I've been happy there to dodge that one. Haven't missed a run. Continued to train as usual, and it's been good. So my taper, after the period where I did 3 weeks where I averaged 144 kilometers a week, I then dropped down to 129 Ks last week. This week I'll do somewhere in the low 120s, and then in the last week going into Melbourne, it'll drop down significantly. I think I've calculated I'll do about 47 kilometers the 6 days leading into Melbourne, and then I'll do, with the race, it'll end up being roughly a 92 kilometer week. For the rest of this week, I've been doing Norwegian singles, so I'll do another sub-threshold session tomorrow, which will be a Saturday. Then on Sunday, I will do an 18 kilometer long run, so that's dropping it down quite a bit again. And then my last session will be on Wednesday, which will be 4 days out from the race. I'll do 4 by 6 minutes sub-threshold, which is probably a little bit more than what a lot of other people would do, but it is only sub-threshold. And I tend to like, again, to keep things ticking over, to kind of blow out the cobwebs. I don't want to back off too much because I tend to just feel really, really sluggish on race day if I really just back things off in that last week. I need to feel like everything's still working, still keeping the systems running. If you listen to the Josh Harris interview that I did, he talked about he felt as though he was someone who lost fitness really quickly, and a long taper didn't work for him. He tended to underperform when he did that. So he did more of a 6-day taper, going into a marathon. Now, I don't think I'm as extreme a case as him, but I kind of echo those sentiments. I don't think that like really backing off in the last, I guess 3 weeks is what a lot of people do. I kind of like to stay in the same routine, just still feel like I am working a little bit, but I'm just kind of backing off volume a little bit here and there, and then by the time I get to the race, I'm feeling ready to go, like things haven't completely shut down. Oh, I realised as well I should mention, so after my last workout on the Wednesday, 4 days out from the marathon, the following day, Thursday, I'll have a complete day off, and then Friday I'll just do a 9k jog with some strides afterwards, so maybe 4 by 15 second strides, and then on the Saturday I'll just do a 4k shakeout jog. But anyway, that's enough taper talk. I think maybe there are ways in which I can improve it for next time, but I guess we'll see what happens on race day, what the result is. I guess I'll do that before I make any decisions on the next taper. So comparing this build to my last marathon where I ran 2:49, it's just head and shoulders beyond what I did there. So if we look at the big chunky bit from 11 weeks out to 3 weeks out, in those 8 weeks I averaged 138 kilometers a week for this build. The last build I only averaged 97 kilometers a week. I was doing a fair amount of cross training in there when I did that 97 Ks, but although that might have helped the fitness a little bit, it definitely didn't help my quads when it came to the pounding of the marathon. And as I said in one of the earlier videos, that was my limiting factor. I just didn't prepare my legs well enough for 42 kilometers, and so that extra mileage, it's helped my fitness obviously, but I think it's going to have really big gains, hopefully, just from having more running specific volume in my legs. So my 10k times obviously come down by about 2.5 minutes since running that last marathon, but I think my endurance, my muscular endurance, is likely to have improved as well, quite significantly. I guess other things to mention, I haven't missed a run in this entire block. I've not had to cut a single session short. I don't think I've actually done a bad session other than the Ross half marathon, which was largely down to weather. I think everything else is I've just ticked those boxes. Everything's gone to plan. I mean, there's probably the argument that maybe I've undercooked it a little bit, but I think the fact that I've had this hip flare up, maybe that suggests that I was pretty close to my limit in terms of what I could handle. So if things don't go well on the weekend, I'm going to be maybe at a loss for what I could have done better. I guess another thing of note is I haven't done a VO2 max session or even been above threshold since the Lakeside 10, which was 10 weeks ago from now. That'll be 11 weeks come race day. Lots of people say even the Norwegian singles approach recommends that you should touch on that energy system maybe every 4 weeks in the form of a race or a time trial, but I haven't. I guess we'll see on race day if that affects my outcome at all. Don't really have much else to say on that. I think people know where I stand on VO2 max training. Yeah, I just thought it was worth pointing that out. Again, if everything goes poorly, you can say you're an idiot, you need VO2 max training, but yeah, we'll see on race day. So I guess we can talk about my pacing plan. I'm going to take off at 2:34 pace. Now that's 3:39 a kilometre, but I'm going to be looking around to see where the packs are forming. If there's a pack just a little bit ahead of me that's going at say 3:36 a kilometre, then I'm probably going to jump in with that. Similarly, if there isn't a pack just ahead and I take a quick look back and I can see a group forming just behind me at say 3:40, 3:41 a k, then I'm probably going to drop back and run with that group. That's probably going to be the more likely option, because 3:40 to 3:41 a kilometre, that's going to get you 2:35. And that seems to be a barrier that a lot of people are shooting for. Now, that isn't my goal, but I've run negative splits in the past in these longer races. The first marathon that I finished, I ran a big negative split. So I know if I'm feeling good and I'm sitting with a pack, there's every chance that I will be able to negative split. I'd much prefer to be 30 seconds behind goal pace, but feeling good at halfway and being with a group, than being 30 seconds up on the goal pace that I want to run, but feeling terrible and being by myself. So yeah, to me, banking time is silly because you've got to carry that for the rest of the race. And we all know that if things start to feel horrible, you can lose 10 minutes rather than 30 seconds. I may have a bit of a decision to make though if the pace is too slow. If it's slower than say 3:42 a kilometre, I might have to push on from the group and hope that a few other guys come with me. But yeah, I guess I shouldn't get ahead of myself. But I guess the ideal situation would be the lead women's group was being paced to 2:32 to 2:34, but I'm not going to count on that. So for me, it's more about just looking around, seeing who's around me, hoping that a pack forms, maybe even having a conversation with a few guys around me early on in the race and discussing what their goals are, and maybe we can kind of work together and try and run somewhere in that range. In terms of weather, it's 9 days out, so can't be too certain. I've looked at the long range forecast and it looks like it's going to be a fairly typical spring day in Melbourne, 20 degrees, but that's the top at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The good thing about Australian marathons, or races in general, are they tend to start very early in the morning. So my race is at 6:30 a.m. We'll be starting in the dark. It means we're going to be running in the coolest part of the day, which is probably going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 degrees based on those long range forecasts. Can't be certain. The wind as well looks like it's going to be fairly still, but again, 9 days out, you don't know. But yeah, fingers crossed that everything stays as it's forecast. I guess the last thing I can talk about is my fueling strategy. I'm going to take on 7 gels. So that means 1 on the start line and then 1 every 20 minutes. I have no problems getting gels down. The gels I've been using, which are the precision gels, they've been great. The flavour's not too strong, just really easy to get down and sit in your stomach. That means that at 2 hours, that'll be my last gel, and then I'm just going to be running for home. I get access to 1 bottle at the 24 kilometre mark, and I'll be just having water in that bottle, but I'll have a gel attached to it, and I'll have a salt capsule in the water. So yeah, I'll get electrolytes there. I'll make sure that I drink lots of that bottle. I'm going to have at least 600 mils. I'll be taking water on at the aid stations as well whenever I can, but that means I'll only have to carry 5 gels, 1 on the start line as well, and then 1 on that water bottle. So that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I've just got to get to the start line feeling good now. Travel is always a nightmare, even though it's only a 1 hour flight. I hate traveling so much. You get that paranoia that everyone around you is sick. But yeah, I just got to get through that headache. And so the next time I talk to you, I'll have run the race and hopefully it'll be good news. So until next time, remember, you can never take your hobby jogging too seriously.